Hello YouTube and welcome to another MongoDB tutorial. So in this video I will show you how to execute some simple queries in MongoDB. So are you ready? Let's get started. So first of all, let's get connected to the MongoDB instance. So here I will use just the Mongo shell. Okay, so by default I am on the test database. So let me show you the collection that I have now. So actually I have here 4 collections, but I will be using for the queries the restaurants actually collection. So you can find a link in the description to download this sample collection called restaurants. Okay, or you can see my previous video to see how you can import actually data to a MongoDB database. So let me show you actually sample document from this restaurant collection. So I'll be using db.restaurant that find one because I want just to show you the first document, because actually this is quite a big collection of our documents. It contains 25,000 documents. Okay, so here you can see the first documents. So it has actually the ID. So there are some simple fields like address, borough, cuisine, grade, and at the end there is our name and restaurant ID. So these fields are simple because they are not nested. It's not like, for example, the address field which contains nested fields like building, coordinate, street, and zip code. Okay, so you have to bear in mind that we have some simple field and we have also some nested field in our document. Okay, so as I told you, this is just the first document, but we have quite a lot document, about 25,000. Okay, so let's execute some simple queries using this restaurant collection sample. So as I told you, in order to display the first argument, you can just find function find one, but if you want to display all the documents, you will just use the function find. Okay, so you can see here we have displayed 20 documents, but we have more to come. Okay, so let's say, for example, that you want to display some specific field. Okay, I don't want to display all the fields in this collection, but I want to display just some specific field in this collection called restaurant. So how can I do that? So it's pretty easy. So I'll use the same function find one because I want just to display or to show you the first documents. So I will use the find one. I will open the parentheses. I will hit enter. Okay, so here we have to provide 2 objects. The first object is between curly braces. Okay, it's empty one, and in the second one, also between curly braces, here we can specify the field that we want to display. For example, I want just to display restaurants or restaurant ID, for example, column 1, because I want to display this field, comma, I want also to display a field called name, also column equal to 1. Let's add another one, for example, the borough. Okay, and finally you can add a cuisine if you want. Cuisine column 1. Okay, then of course you have to close your parentheses here. So this query actually will display just this 4 specific fields, because remember, in our restaurant collection we have other fields like, for example, street, zip code, and also grades and so on. But using this query will display only these 4 fields. So let's execute this query and see the results. If everything is okay, you can see that now I have only, except the first one, which is mandatory, which is the object or ID, you have your 4 fields. You have the borough, the cuisine, the name, and the restaurant ID. Of course, here it has displayed only one because I used the function find1. But if you repeat the same query and use the function find, it will display all the restaurants in your actually collection. So as you can see here, we have only the 4 fields that we have chosen here. Okay, so this is the first simple query that we have executed in order to display just some specific fields. Okay, next, let's say now, for example, that we want actually to exclude specific field. So here we'll use the same query, but let's say that I want to exclude from this query, for example, the restaurant ID. I don't want this field. So all you have to do is to press this one here by 0, and you will get, in this case, just 3 fields in your queries. So let's execute this one and see the results. Here we go. Here actually we have here a mistake. Okay, we have here a bad value. So let's see once again what we have done here. So here, as you can see, the message is very clear. You cannot have mixed or inclusion and exclusion. You cannot mix the exclusion fields with the inclusion fields. But what you can do, you can actually exclude the underscore ID, which is a special field for the database, okay, or the collection actually. So with this underscore ID, you can exclude it, but the other field you cannot mix them. Okay, so if you execute your query, you can see now that we have only 3 fields that are displayed, but we don't have anymore the underscore ID field. Okay, so now let's say that we want to display a nested field. So as I told you before, let me show you one document. So here, as you can see, for example, zip code is a nested field because it's inside address. So how can I display it in my query? So it's pretty easy also. So let me show you this example, for example. And here let's add that we want, for example, a zip code. For the zip code, you can just add the field name, but in this time you have to mention the first field, then the nested field. So in this case it's zip code, then comma or colon 1. Okay, so with this notation you can display nested field in your queries. So remember, address dot zip code. Okay, and now as you can see, we have our zip code displayed in the query. Okay, here we go. So now let's say that we want to display all the documents that are in the borough Bronx, for example, because as I told you, I have special field called borough, and there are some restaurants that exist in different area, but let's say that we want just to display the restaurants that are present in the borough of Bronx. So how can I do that? So the query is pretty simple. All you have to do here is to add between curly braces the field name. So in this case it's borough, and which is equal to Bronx. So let's add it. Here we go. So that's all. So now you have your filter in the Bronx. So all the restaurants here you can see are present in the borough of Bronx. Okay. So let's say now that I want to display just the first 5 that exist in this borough of Bronx. So how can I do that? Simply you have to add here a function called limit, and between parentheses you want to specify how many documents that you want to display. For example, here we want to display just 4 or 5 documents. Okay, so here I did a mistake actually. See the mistake that I have done here? I specified find one, which will display only 1 document, and here I want the first 5. Okay, so I have here to use the function find, not find one. So always pay attention to that. Then here we can add limit of 5 documents. Here we go. And here you can see at the bottom we have fetched 5 documents in 11 milliseconds. Okay, so use this function with the conjunction of the find, not the find one function. Okay, and at the end let's want to display the next 5, not the first 5 but the next 5 one. So I will use the same query find, but here I have to add another function called skip. So I want to skip the 5 ones and display the next 5. Okay, so I have the same query. I have only 5, the next 5 documents after the 5 first one. Okay, so as you can see here, the queries in MongoDB are pretty simple, pretty easy, but you have to pay attention to some nested fields. If you have nested fields, you have to add a dot between the fields, and also make sure to use them properly and proper order. So that was just a brief introduction to how you use queries in MongoDB. So in next video where we see some very advanced queries using aggregate function or so on. So as always, I hope it has been informative for you, and I want to thank you a lot. Bye bye.